investment banking has a bit of a stereotype, which is not positive. Oh, I have completely missed the fact. I've overlooked that organizational success is actually about people. It's about how people work together, it's about relationships, it's about teams. No business succeeds because of one individual. We often fall into that trap, right? We often talk about what I now know is called a hero leader. You get a PhD in the management field for adding to theory, not adding to practice.
Hello, welcome Jojo's Cross Borders. Today we have a Dr. Phil Renshaw. He brings his idea, coaching is leadership. Let's hear the story, how he from a finance guy into the real boy, just like the show in Pinocchio. Thank you so much, Dr. Phil Renshaw, for today's interview. It's a privilege for us to have you.
Not at all. It's a privilege for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you quickly introduce our audience what doctors you are? And are you a doctor for medical?
No. I'm a doctor in the field of management and leadership. My doctorate was between 2015 and 2019 at Cranfield University, which is in the centre of England. And Cranfield has quite a range of expertise in very different areas, but one of them that's well known globally is the School of Management.
Got you, yeah. And then now you are also a professor in different, that's how I met you.
That's right.
You're
right.
one of my professors when I studied at Birkbeck University.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm no longer a professor distinctly at one place. I usually move around, and they have different titles. Visiting professors and visiting.
So you can basically teaching more students in different universities. And cool. All right. Yeah. So today the interview is not about teaching, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Today's interview, I want to talk to you about your personal journey and also what you do outside of the academia part. Yeah. Is that okay?
Of course. Delighted to share.
Right. So as I understand that, we have initial Zoom. I know that you wasn't a doctor before, and you were a finance guy, right? Working for the banking industry as a banker.
Yes. So my background very different. In fact, as a child, I wanted to be a banker, which is one of those slightly astonishing things when you look back, because you wonder how on earth you come up to those views as a child, right?
Wow, ambitious child.
Ambitious,
I can say, yeah.
So much so that I did a degree in banking, which was, I think it's still fairly rare to get a degree in banking and finance, but it was very rare in those days. But I was so committed to the idea, I wanted to do banking. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by a bank as well, so I was straight into working. So for 10 years or more, I worked in international banking. I was fortunate to live and work in London and also in New York and in Australia, in Sydney, Australia.
Wow. So international banker travel around the major cities, right?
Yeah.
So what did you do, like in terms of, can I explore a little bit more about what did you do for the banking and what sort of clients or teammates you worked with?
Yeah. So mostly, apart from the initial years, I did what's called structured finance, which essentially means there's a very large amount of money needed for a large project or a large thing. Actually, the first 2 or 3 years it was about financing aeroplanes, which of course are very expensive and require clever financing, usually involving mechanisms that help save tax around the world. Quite frankly, that's the way of finding the best way to finance something. And I developed from that through the following years, doing that between different countries. Always for major corporates, the global names that we're all familiar with these days, or would have been then. Some clients were banks, some were airlines, and others that were quite varied. So pharmaceutical companies, it varied a lot.
Okay, but for me, I mean, I'm not a banker, but from just hear what you're doing in structured finance, be allowed to getting enough funds for major project, like say aeroplanes, it's kind of quite rewarding, without this structured finance. I mean, individuals or small organizations, they can't do things like that, right? Yeah,
that's right. Right. No, I mean, I found the work fantastic because the people you work with were intellectually inspiring, they're very clever people. And the clients, even though I would have been, young and junior in the early days, the clients were always very senior people because they were the treasurers in organizations or the finance directors, which means they are going to be clever people. And so being in that space was wonderful. I learned to work very quickly with legal issues, because it's all about contracts ultimately, these things, to get the finances right, which then involves you in negotiations and understanding differences of different ways people negotiate and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I loved it a lot from that perspective.
Right. But what changed?
Well, what changed first of all was I gradually started to fall out of love with many of my immediate colleagues. Investment banking has a bit of a stereotype, which is not positive.
Which means?
Well, essentially it means there certainly was then, people who were interested more about making their money for themselves more than they were about working together as a team or delivering ultimately really what the client wanted. It was about what their check was, their own earnings. And I just found that more and more uninspiring.
Okay.
And so it led me to decide to move to the other side of the fence. So in other words, I went to work for a major corporate, but still doing the same thing. I just was in their treasury team. It was a major IT company called Electronic Data Systems, EDS. It doesn't exist anymore through lots of global mergers. But
Changing the name.
Rebrand,
yeah.
But at the time, 140,000 people globally. So a big company.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing... They led, in those days, the IT outsourcing business, and outsourcing would involve a lot of initial investment cost because there's usually lots of equipment.
Yes, ordering. Yeah.
And it was that role that I was involved in financing and helping to finance. So that was the link, if you like, to what I'd done before.
Yeah. So you make sure that they have enough money to spend by the end of the year.
Yes. And it was also very project-led. So often to win a big project, and in those days projects were often hundreds of millions of pounds. They were very large. The world of IT has changed a bit, but well, it's changed a lot, hasn't it, the world of IT? So it would often be part of our whole negotiation involved this special financing that we created.
Right. Okay, so I hear that's like you wasn't happy with the immediate, peers, right?
Yeah.
And then so you change your job, work for the party B.
Yeah.
So then what make you think you quit the banker job? I mean, there must be something there, like you basically completely, I don't want a banker anymore.
It's a great question. I think looking back historically, I would never have known this in the past, but when you look back, I think it was the desire for change. So my career always involved every 2 or 3 years doing something different. So, for example, going to work in the US would mean quite a difference of the way things would happen, and then going to live and work in Australia, different. And then I was coming back to the UK thinking, well, how do I get to be different again?
Right.
So I think that was part of the important trigger that said, I'm going to go and work for a corporate. I'll be on the other side of negotiations, needing the money rather than providing the money,
right?
And that could just create new and interesting opportunities. And it did very quickly because the treasury that I went to work for was initially what you might call very tax-led. So they were interested in what we call tax avoidance in general, in looking at tax as a way of raising money. And a new treasurer came in globally and said, ethically, I don't believe we should do that anymore, so we're going to stop. And that worked out really well for me, again, because it meant I had to learn new skills to do financing in a different way.
Yeah, but what I heard is the finance, numbers.
Yeah.
So now you don't work with the numbers. You're working for people and people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge change. I know you want to try new things, but what make you stop working with numbers?
Well, there were a couple of events that happened. So I'd moved on to become, I ran our European Treasury and corporate finance, and then I became finance director in the UK. But there were 2 or 3 key events that collectively made me realise I'd completely missed this idea that people are actually what makes organisations succeed. I was almost a classic stereotypical finance guy who thought, if we just focus on the numbers and we all understand our numbers, then we're going to have a successful business. And I fitted that, the individual who, frankly, I think some colleagues probably disliked. I would turn up and, drill them on, do they understand their numbers? How are they going to achieve their numbers? Numbers.
All right.
And that will get business success.
So you were a number driven.
Absolutely, numbers driven.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then a couple of different episodes happened, which gave me this insight to, I have completely missed the fact.
Really?
I've overlooked that organizational success is actually about people. It's about how people work together. It's about relationships. It's about teams. No business succeeds because of one individual. We often fall into that trap, right? We often talk about what I now know is called a hero leader.
What's the words like as a charismatic leadership?
Yes, like a charismatic leadership. We all think that we hear this voice and we think that person has created everything.
Yeah.
But that's actually nonsense. Right? Leadership requires everybody and their interactions.
So it's not just a number.
Yeah, and in fact, numbers are still important because people who understand numbers have power. So that's
CFO.
Yeah, the CFO. They have power. I mean, only earlier this week, I had a potential client ring me up and say, we're going to have to pause our conversations because we've got a new finance director and they've put a stop on all external training cost.
Oh dear.
And I think to myself,
it's the number.
It's the numbers. I would have done that in the past. It's the classic sort of, I'm thinking short term and I'm not thinking enough about if I stop training, the people won't develop, they won't get better, and ultimately the outcome is I'll have to employ other people, and that'll cost me more than if I train them. But I think people focused on the numbers often miss that sort of subtlety, because of the fact that the ups and downs, the debits and credits are in different places. You stop spending money over here, that saves money, you think it's great. It causes a rise in cost over here.
And then people.
But do you notice that was a result of that?
The cost of it,
And I think
the loss from the,
I think people don't.
Okay. So what exactly happens to make you quit numbers and focus on people?
So there were 2 or 3 stories. I mean, one of the stories was I was lucky enough to be involved in a training event, which was being done because of the business I was working in, which was a consortium, and it was having incredibly difficult times. So some people were brought in to try and help build the relationships between people.
Yeah.
And I went on a course using a classic sort of psychometric tool.
Yes.
And that tool basically said that I was a people person and not a data person or a process person. And my colleagues in the room questioned it and
laughing.
said, laughing. They said, this cannot be true about Phil because he is obsessed
by the numbers.
And he forces us to deliver. He knows the detail. That's him. He's not a people person. And I thought, wow, that's how they see me. And that's obviously right. That's obviously what I'm doing in this organization. So that was one of the things.
Yeah. Okay.
And probably the second thing that's worth sharing is, in the process of trying to change success in this particular consortium I was working in at the time, the group that came in included a wonderful lady who is now a great friend of mine, and she was coming in as an advisor and a coach and a mentor, and it was in conversation with her in a one-to-one that she was doing with all of the leaders. And she was challenging me as a coach normally does. I'd been brought into that consortium I was a troubleshooter. There were many troubleshooters. I wasn't the only one, but I was brought in as a troubleshooter. And she got me to see that I was making it worse because I was coming in with a numbers way of solving it when everybody else wanted to solve it in different ways. And ultimately the issue wasn't numbers. The issue was relationships between people that were in constant conflict. And they were all trying to do it their own way, their own cultural way. We had 5 different companies in this big consortium. And that was, for me, a real hallelujah moment. I went, wow, you're right. This is about people. It's not about numbers. And I'm making it worse. I'm in here driving people to do it my corporate's way. And it's not working. It's just making it worse. Okay.
Wow. So interesting. So for you, first of all, you understand from the psychometric tool and then digging out what's the real your talent is. It's not related to the number. It's the people. That's the first call. And second call is through this workshop that by your coach. And the illustrate that's only using the numbers, utilizing the number to solve the problem, it's not going to work. So that to combine together, that make you quit your numbers job and become a people researcher, right? Yeah. And it went through phases. So the first step was because I was in this big consortium, I was able to go to my fellow leadership team and the CEO and say, I want to do this over here. I want to stop doing the finance thing. I've realized the problem we have is this over here, and I want to be in there. And the CEO was kind enough to say, yes, you're in charge of that. They're very supportive. And then I had for me, what turned out to be fortunate was the 2008-9 financial crash was just after HP, Hewlett-Packard, bought my company. But the crash caused them all sorts of problems, and they had to make lots of people redundant very quickly.
and so they paid me to leave. I had already decided I was going to leave.
Oh, that's a bonus.
So the bonus is they paid me to leave. And so from there, I basically started working in the leadership development and coaching business. I trained to be a coach before I left, in fact, supported by the company.
By the companies, the supportive boss.
They were very supportive, So I'd become a professional coach like yourself, an executive
You like
coach.
me, yeah.
And I started doing bits of that
coachings,
work. And then I met a lady with whom we set up a business together for a number of years, which was focused around coaching people on international assignments.
So that's your PhD, right?
And that's my PhD, yeah.
Because so can you explain a little bit more about your PhD, international assignments?
Yeah, delighted.
That's really interesting topics, and that's exactly what I'm really passionate about. Because I know, like, when people working at the cross-borderly, they bring their own challenges or issues, and then it's not easy. And back to the office, like a headquarters, it's not easy to support them either, right? So
absolutely. Those challenges are well known, aren't they? That it's very difficult. And that's why coaching is often a great tool to help, particularly the individuals.
Right.
In my business, we became fascinated by the idea that we should be coaching not just the individual who's moving, but their bosses. So the boss who said we should send somebody, as well as the boss that they were working for, because that would help them all constantly explore how to get the best out of that international assignment.
Right.
And my fascination came because, having been a finance guy, I knew how expensive it is to send someone on an international assignment. So an organisation needs to be dedicated to that solution. And so I'm questioning, well, if it's so expensive, they seem to have a lot of problems, and they don't seem to know that it's actually valuable, ultimately. It's valuable in the first instance, because they're often sending someone for a problem. And we usually know the individual in the long term gets great value from it. But in the shorter term, when they're on the assignment, it can be a real struggle. And as you say, when they go back to headquarters, a real struggle as well, because they're not supported appropriately
enough by them.
Yeah. And so that I became more and more fascinated by that, reading about it, and ultimately it led me to doing a PhD specifically in what is the organisational value of international assignments.
Wow! So you build up different models to solve that problems, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting journey for anyone who's done a PhD. I was quite naive. I didn't really know what I was signing up for, to be honest. It has very different challenges, the way you are expected to think, the way you are expected to write. So academic published papers are written in a very different style.
Oh, tell me about that.
So you have to learn to do that.
Exactly.
Right? You have to learn. I used to say that it's a game. It's like playing a game. And you need to learn that there are new rules. And some of those rules are you can't use simple short words. You need to use the long, exactly specific word.
And you are a native speaker. Me, I'm Chinese.
Indeed. I used to say, actually, it's funny you say that, but I would often compliment the overseas fellow students. Their ability to write academically was often better because you would have a better understanding of the individual word, because you'd learnt, there's a struggle, isn't there, to work out which is the right word to use in when you're translating. And so I would sometimes absolutely be sitting in lectures and I'd hear one of my colleagues ask a question and use a word, and I'd think, wow, that's the wrong word. My first thought was that's the wrong word. And then I'd go Google it and I'd go, no, that's the right word.
That's the right word.
They are better at it than I am.
You know what? Because of the way that we train, like we learn English, like by remember the vocabulary first. The larger your vocabulary, the better. And then we fill in with the grammar. It's like you building a house, okay? So we think of vocabulary is the bricks. The construction is a grammar, and then we're adding together without the context.
Makes perfect sense.
And especially whoever can study overseas, we have to go through this like a very challenging like English exams, which is doesn't test you. Small words. They're only like a 20 syllables together. That long words.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a lady actually I haven't seen for a while, but she came back to live in London at the beginning of this year, Chinese, and she was one of those I'm struggling for her name right now, which is a shame. I will send you it afterwards. It's brilliant academic, brilliantly capable, and she was the one who would regularly do this. I would regularly think, she's just used a really long word and it sounds wrong.
I know,
it's
but that's all we read.
That's right. Wow.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay, so let's pull you back about like your assignments, like a PhD assignments, and then after you've done that, like what do you think? Like what was the achievements in terms of a real business sense? It's not. We talk about like your solutions for your clients.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I think one of the things that's important to know is you get a PhD in the management field for adding to theory, not adding to practice. This was one of the things I was naive about. I went in thinking I was trying to solve a practical problem. So to get your PhD, you're hoping that there'll be a practical outcome. Yeah. But it's not always that straightforward. No. So although my PhD involved taking a theory from a very different world, the world of finance, the world of financial options, actually, and bringing it into the world of leadership, which had never been done before. But that in itself might get me the PhD, but it doesn't always help with the practical question of,
that's exactly that's why I ask you this, like what is the benefits, what we can see.
And I think I'm not, in all honesty, I'm not sure that I've had a material impact directly from my PhD, but the indirect one was seeing the connection with the coaching and feeling that the power of coaching could work in two ways. One is having a coach, as I'd previously said, to work with the people involved would help them understand what is the value and what are they trying to get. So it sort of reinforced the belief I had beforehand with no evidence, if you like.
For coaches.
That coaches in that field are really important because it helps everyone involved truly understand and answer the question, what am I here for? If I'm being sent to London to do something, I need to work out exactly what it is and how I'm going to prove it to both to the organisation and to myself. And having someone as a mentor or a coach is really important to help you achieve that.
Exactly.
And then the second part is, which is ultimately where my business has gone now, is saying if you can help everyone involved improve their own coaching skills to use in their leadership, if you can break these things down just to daily activities and improve their capabilities, that itself will help them cope and help them be more productive.
Wow. Okay. So that's different layers. That's amazing. So not only like you recommend this, not recommend this, like realize like or how important this coaching it is like for an individual and organization. Then you turn into a practical, for how to help people having this coaching skill. Right?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Cool.
One of the things, for example, is often when people go on these international assignments, one of the first steps, at least with the bigger companies who are happy to fund it, is some sort of cultural training. And that training is really important.
Yeah. Thanks, because that's what I'm doing.
I know. And I think it's sometimes too narrow. So it becomes teaching you about the stereotypes in another country. And that's important. You do need to know those things.
Yes.
But they are stereotypes. So therefore you need skills, and I know that's what you do in your coaching as well.
The coaching way.
You need the coaching way to be able to understand working with others who are different.
With the challenges, with the differences. That's it. That's I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. So you see good intent from organisations, and they will fund cultural training programs. But these things are often just only go so far. They're online based and they're teaching you about traditions and stereotypes and whether you should hold hands or shake hands or whether you should give a business card like that or what, those sorts of things. They're important, but they're not enough because we are all individuals, right? I mean, that, if you like, was part of my journey from finance to people. Because I probably, quite frankly, thought the people who didn't understand numbers were just a bit thick. I'm
with you. I'm those thick group people.
I just didn't understand that they're just different to me. Their intelligence is in a different place. I get this, they get that.
Yeah,
right? And it was that sort of realising those differences that made you go, okay.
Now you realise that they're not thick. They could be smarter.
Yeah, they could be smarter. It's just I'm not describing it in a way that helps them.
You were thick then, so to think about they were thick.
I'm expecting them to understand my words, right?
Good,
and I need to change them. And I think that's the same in the international assignment field, because of course you are, as the person sent overseas, you are constantly facing people with very different perspectives to you. Even in your organisation, there'll be organisational perspectives that are probably very different in the British subsidiary compared to the Chinese HQ, for example.
Exactly.
They will have quite different cultures.
Oh, very different. Yeah. That's interesting. Can we talk about another topics now? It's like why you think, what make you think, or why you argue leaders need to all have the ability to be able to coach?
Thank you for asking a question. It's the thing I'm really passionate about.
Yes.
When I was doing my PhD, I met Jenny Robinson, who is now Dr. Jenny Robinson.
Yeah, of course. We learn a lot about her.
And her PhD is actually in leadership. So we found that we had a very similar views about coaching and the coaching skills, and this led me to realise, I think she might have already got there if you like, but led me to realise that there are two important things in learning coaching skills. One is bringing them down into simple components and just practicing small things, but the other is realising that basically these things that we call coaching, the skills that together create this thing called coaching, they are just leadership skills. And we've sort of almost misdirected people to think that coaching is something different. Part of our research involved, and we still do this actually in our workshops, but our research involved asking people to describe the actions and behaviours of their best boss, or the person they most admired in work, but someone they knew, not someone on the television, right? But someone they knew. They might not have worked for them, but wanted to work for them. And then describe their actions and behaviours. What did they do? And the thing that's fascinating is that, in effect, I've asked you to define leadership indirectly. It's a sort of slightly trick question.
Right.
But I didn't ask you to define leadership. And the result is people don't go for the classic answers. If I asked you to define leadership, people would almost definitely go to a textbook answer. They'd talk about people who have vision, who are at the front, who are leading from the front.
Who are handsome.
Yeah, handsome and tall. That's right. All of those things.
And white.
And white. Yeah, no, absolutely. And male. I mean, that's right. They would go into all of those spaces. We ask them indirectly, and then we play back what they've said, and the answers they give are always relational. They always support coaching. They're all basically the skills of coaching if you separate them out. So they say things like, they allowed me to fail, but they supported me. They wouldn't let me fail if there was a negative consequence for me. They would challenge me, but again, with support. They would give me opportunities to try new things. They were great at listening. They always seemed to have time. How did they always have time for me? But they did. I sensed that they were always interested in what I was doing, however busy they may otherwise be. They were very self-aware. They were great at giving feedback. They'll describe all of these things. And we say, well, if you add those things together, that is the skill of coaching in a leadership context, right? So it's different to being a professional coach. There are similarities, but the boundaries are different in a professional coach. Essentially, of course, in a professional coaching, everything is confidential. There's a nice, neat boundary about who we're trying to help. In a leadership context, that becomes much harder because there are other factors involved.
Yeah, it's a mingle about coaching and mentor.
That's right. It's similar to that, isn't it? So we basically...
And boss, of course.
Yes. And so having done this research, we play it back and say, so indirectly we've asked you to define leadership. And what you've essentially said is leadership is coaching. Coaching is leadership. Now this is really important because historically lots of things have suggested to us that coaching is a style of leadership, or that we're looking for a coaching culture of leadership. And we would say, well, the research we've done and continue to do is not saying that. It's saying coaching is leadership. If you don't do those things, you might be the most senior person in the room. That's true. But that doesn't mean to say what you're doing is leadership. After all, do you think of a dictator as being involved in leadership? People get confused and mix up words to do with seniority and authority, and they refer to the senior person as a leader. And this is the problem, because we would say they're not exhibiting leadership. right? They might be the most senior person,
leader,
right?
yeah.
But they're not really doing that. They're doing something else. So our argument is you need to learn these skills and get better at them, because that's what leadership is, and we all want to be great, at leadership. And the positive thing about it all is they are all relatively straightforward things to understand. Doesn't mean to say they're easy. You have to practice them, right? It's lovely to think that people who ask great creative questions, they've learnt and practiced that over time for most of them, unless they're luckily intuitive. But the thing is, you can practice that. You can learn to that.
You can learn.
You can give some attention to it.
Great leaders can be made.
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
not born with that, right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So with your next research, what is the coaching leaders on the go, right? Can you explain to our audience a bit more for your tools, you can give into the audience?
Of course, delighted to. Yeah, I mean, basically, we Jenny and I, so we came together, discovered that we had a passion for the same thing, and that's how we produced the research, and we wrote a book, and we produced an assessment tool or a profiling tool. And basically that tool works like a classic questionnaire survey system, and it gives you a report which shows you how you are using these different skills. We think there are 15 different dimensions that come together to make up this thing called coaching. Highly interrelated, but the tool allows you to see how you are using those skills in your context, whatever that context is, and compares it to others. So that gives you an idea of, well, I could be doing more of that,
right?
Or maybe I don't need to do more of that. I need to do more of something else.
Okay.
So those things might be, am I good at asking great questions? Just talked about that a moment ago. That could be something I need to give focus to. How good am I at listening?
Right.
We talk about listening as a skill, but lots of people in their day-to-day management and leadership, unless it's been brought to their attention, they're often unaware that it's a skill, that you can learn to be better at it. Or another example would be contracting, which in the world of coaching we know very well, but often externally people don't.
The leaders, they don't know.
They don't, right?
Yeah.
And so we're saying, if you stop and think about it, it's intellectually obvious that if you agree how you're going to work with someone before you begin, you're more likely to get a better outcome. It's the equivalent to, how you often hear people complain about going to too many meetings. I would offer you that it's not really that they're going to too many meetings that's the problem. It's the fact that they don't know why they're going to the meetings, or the meetings are poorly run. Because if you went to a meeting where there was really good contracting and we all knew what we were doing, why we were in the meeting, who was there and who wasn't there, and what we were trying to achieve,
right,
then all of those things would become motivational and we'd all feel better.
Effective or efficient.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay. So, but you're running your diary without knowing that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's different things. Can be tedious, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And often when we work with people,
when
we work with people, this idea of being focusing on and thinking about contracting has a really quick impact, because it's so obvious to people when it's pointed out to them. You go, oh no, that is true. Why am I not doing that?
Yeah. So basically, this tool is a kind of like a psychometric assessment tool. Same things.
Yeah, it's very much like it. We strongly argue it's not a psychometric, because psychometrics are technically looking at your psychology or your traits, your beliefs, whereas we're
your behaviors.
That's right. Whereas we would say
your visions.
We're looking
not the visions.
Yeah, we would say we're looking at your actions and behaviors. So there is a connection there with psychometrics, but we're saying it's in academic terms it's sociological, looking at your actions and behaviors. So we're not saying these are strengths or weaknesses, because, for example, you could be very good at something but not doing it. So, and traditional tools might suggest that's not a strength because you're not doing it. And we're saying, well, we don't know. We don't know. You need to work that out, working with a coach or a colleague or a mentor to explore. Am I not doing this because I'm not very good, or am I not doing it because I've not thought about it?
Or don't know how.
Or
I can't be bothered with a year and a half training to be a professional coach.
That's right. All of those possibilities.
So,
And that, you see, what you described there is important as well, because a lot of people are led to believe that to learn this thing called coaching, I have to go on a long course which takes many months. Yeah. Well, that's true, but that's actually teaching you to be a professional coach, which is a different thing. It's a powerful thing, but it's a different thing.
But so in terms of in the organization, unless you're the trainer or coach, you can't just do that, right? So Professor Phil's arguments is coaching is the leadership.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's make you to develop your new tools and models, to bring coaching skill should be applied for all good leaders.
That's right.
Right.
That's right, absolutely. And it's this, we call it, as you said, coaching on the go, because we're trying to get to this idea that it's in the moment when these skills are useful. There might be times when they're not useful. That's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
There will be times in leadership where you have to tell somebody what to do,
Yes.
or you're making a decision when you don't have all of the data and you'd like to do it a different way, but you can't. Those things will happen.
Yeah. Oh, I will ask you another question. I'm sorry for this interview a bit long, but I just want to be critical of thinking and challenging the way that's what if the leaders doesn't know coaching skill, or they don't do the coaching for their leadership. The reason I ask you this because from where I came from, so our culture, I think the leader is more the hero leaders. The young people is it's less than that, but still kind of like I give you the order, tell you to do this task, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with
this
you.
type of a style.
Yeah.
So what
happens?
can happen if?
Yeah, well, I think there are two thoughts that come to mind. One is that there's good quality research by economists rather than by, what should we call them, soft-hearted people who believe in leadership skills, numbers people, I suppose, which says that if you have the skills of a leader who coaches, you get significantly greater productivity, like 50%, significantly greater. You get much greater levels of engagement with your staff and retention as well. So in effect, by not doing those things, that's what you're missing out on.
50% more.
50% more, which is fascinating. The other thing that's in our work and research we found that's fascinating is that this argument and these skills that we're saying is leadership, that together they are leadership, we get the same responses from everyone around the world. So even though your work context, as you described, perhaps in different parts of the world, Asia and Africa often have more of that hierarchical system and the hero leader, right? We still do, of course, in Europe, but it's less perhaps. They still say that what they want in their leaders are these same skills of coaching. So it means that the way you're using them has to be different because you're in a different context. Yeah. But they're still saying those are the right skills. And that's fascinating because a lot of other research would lead us to believe that it would be very different in a different country.
Oh, really?
Right? Whereas, what ours is saying is the context is different. So the way you might use
describing the demands, let's say, desire for what is a great leader is the concept is still the same, no matter which country you run.
Exactly right. So, even if you're in a highly hierarchical scenario, you can use the skills of contracting, for example, but you'll have to do it very differently. You can't challenge your boss in a very hierarchical organization
unless you want to lose your job.
Unless you want to lose your job, exactly. So you have to learn to use that skill differently to one where there's essentially great psychological safety. Then you'd be able to challenge them in a different way.
The principles apply the same.
The principle is still the same, which is okay. So I need to work out perhaps a cleverer way in order, as you say, not to lose your job.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for today's interview. You gave us a lot of insights and share with us your personal journey from a numbers guy into a people's guy. Now I say guy rather than professor now. All right. Thank you for watching. And if you like our conversation, please hit the subscribe, and we can also send you the Professor Phil's tool to you as well.